Welcome to the show, everyone. Christian Jackson here with special guest Zach Gagan, who's a staff writer for Kentucky Sports Radio. He is our Wildcats expert for today. Zach, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Christian. I'm excited to talk some ball.
So, Mark Pope, year one, dealt with injuries last year. Kirk Risa, Jackson Robinson, and Lamont Butler was hurt. Andrew Carmen sometime. Still leads Kentucky to a 3 seed and a Sweet 16, the Kentucky's first since 2019. Before we get into this year's roster, how do you just assess the beginning of Mark Pope's tenure in Lexington?
I think other than, the Kentucky fans will joke that the goal every year is to win a national championship. But if you can't do that, like what Mark Pope did in his first year was probably the next best thing from the very moment he started with his press conference in Rupp Arena last April that had 20,000 people. They had to kick people out of they couldn't let more people in because there were so many people just for his press conference. And the buzz just grew from there. Built a roster essentially from scratch. Had one commit in Travis Perry, who's no longer there now at Ole Miss, and it really had to go through the portal and just kind of match together a roster any way he could. Ended up doing a pretty bang-up job of it. Recruited a lot of grad students, seniors, guys that had a lot of college basketball experience, 100 games plus under their belt, and then just got them all to mesh really well and produced a really fun offense to watch. They shot a lot of threes. You had Kobe Brea and Amari Williams end up getting second-round draft picks. Those were Mark Pope's first-ever draft picks. I think it was, the number's escaping me right now, the exact number. I think it was 11 or 12 of those high major wins, the quad one wins. I think that was a record for Kentucky. Had to go through the gauntlet of the best conference in probably college basketball history. Did really well there. Won an SEC tournament game. Had a couple of Otega Oway game winners throughout it. You beat Louisville, you beat Duke. Kind of really knocked off all the checklists that a lot of the Kentucky fans were hoping for. And then, of course, like you said, you make the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2019. It wasn't all perfect. They had some games where they kind of blew it. Ole Miss, Georgia, games that just didn't really go well for them. The injuries, like you said, really just kind of it locked that team a little bit from making an even bigger run. But to say that it wasn't, exciting and fun the entire way, from start to finish would be a lie, because it really was. It was a great time to be a Kentucky fan last year, and now Pope's trying to do it again in year two and take them to even newer heights and bigger heights. So we'll see exactly how it all plays out. But year one was definitely a success compared to, I guess, whatever fans' expectations were. That was definitely, he met them or exceeded them for the most part.
Of course. And you bring back Otega Oway, some ancillary pieces, and then you make some splashes in the portal, including taking two guys from other SEC schools. Mm-hmm. So when I look at this roster, I see 12 dudes that I think could play. I kind of want to start, before we dive into some of these guys individually, what's it been like this summer, kind of just bringing this group together? Because there's a lot of guys who are making money and a lot of guys who want to play, and just how is, that competition and developed, but also just building chemistry between these new faces.
Yeah, well, the whole summer has basically just been figuring out, okay, how does Pope make all this work? Because like you said, he legitimately has 12 guys that could play, real minutes for a high major team right now. So you got to figure out how to make that all work, how to make it all mesh, how to make everyone happy, things like that. A lot of the kids probably came in kind of already understanding their roles and things like that. But then you hear all the offseason reports of Trent Noah, he doesn't miss. Cam Williams, he's looking like he could be a potential first round pick. Stuff like Colin Chandler's taking that leap that people kind of saw at the end of last season. Jasper Johnson, can he be the microwave scorer that the scouts kind of think that he was, at least in high school? Can he kind of have that translate and be a go-to piece for Pope too? So really the whole offseason has been figuring out, because obviously they're not going to play 12 guys once it hits March, so they're probably going to go down to 8, 9, maybe even 10. Who are those pieces? So basically the whole offseason, at least among Kentucky fans, is trying to figure out, all right, who, projecting who can be those pieces that really slide in and take over, bigger roles. Is it going to be a game by game thing? Making everything work. Because like you said, you kind of have your top, your veteran guys in, Otega Oway, and then the pieces you brought over from Florida and Alabama and Mo Diabate and Denzel Aberdeen. You have a guy from last year in Brandon Garrison who played a lot of minutes, so you kind of can pencil him in while Jaden Quaintance is still recovering from his ACL. So there's just a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving pieces. Unfortunately, they just had a Jaylen Low injury go down, so now the talk is, okay, in the time that he is recovering, who steps up as the secondary point guard? Is it Aberdeen or Colin Chandler or Jasper Johnson? So there's a lot of conversations going on right now about the actual rotation and the lineup, and because I haven't exactly done deep dives into the rest of the country. You might probably know better than I do, but I can't imagine there's many teams deeper in the country than Kentucky, just from a 1 to 12, even 13 or 14 player standpoint.
I want to start with these injuries. So Jaylen Low, it doesn't seem super serious, like he should be fine soon. Is that correct? And then tell me about Jaden Quainton's timeline.
Yeah, so Jaylen Low, it happened right in front of me last Friday, I guess it was, in the blue-white scrimmage. He got tangled up with Otega Oway. It was a clean, regular basketball play, just had his shoulder pop out of socket, essentially. You heard him scream, it popped out. So now the initial reports that are coming out is that it's going to be, kind of a best-case scenario thing where maybe keep him out for a few weeks, let him rest. I'm sure his shoulder's really sore. They've got a Purdue exhibition, play the top-ranked team in the country this Friday. Odds are low that Jaylen Low will end up playing in that game and maybe even miss the one against Georgetown the week after. Maybe I guess best case scenario have him back for the season opener in early November. But everything that we've heard throughout the summer was kind of that Jaylen Low looked like the all ACC level guard that he was last year at Pitt, and maybe even better now that he's here, kind of in a better system with better players around him. So the early returns on Jaylen Low have been great, and he looked great in that blue-white game before he went down with the injury. So whenever he does come back, we do feel confident here in Lexington that Kentucky's going to have a go-to reliable point guard that can kind of be the perfect complementary piece next to Otega Oway and help get everybody else involved and not have the issue of you've got guys, 8th, 9th, 10th of the rotation that feel like they're not being able to get there. Jaylen Low's a guy that can help facilitate for them as well. And then with Jaden Quainton's, that's kind of the ceiling riser for this team, right? So the team is already pretty good as is. They've got a lot of pieces, but Jaden Quainton is look up any mock draft, you're going to see him top 10 for next year, and the majority of them, maybe even top 5. The Bleacher Report just had him number 5 in theirs that came out this morning. So he's just a defensive freak. He's 6'10". He's super young. He had an excellent 17-year-old freshman season at Arizona State. So the expectations for him coming in, whenever he does get healthy, even coming off the ACL, is the expectation is that he comes in and still kind of looks like the same player he was last year. Mark Pope has talked all off season long about how Jaden Quainton is coming along at the rate that they expected. Not necessarily too far ahead of schedule, but not behind schedule either, kind of just a little bit ahead of where they want him to be. So that's all good signs there. No real timetable on when he might actually make his debut, but the hope that whenever he does come back is he slides right into that starting 5 spot, maybe even the starting 4 spot, depending, I guess, on who he gets paired with. Most likely the starting 5, though. And you just have him run alongside Otega and Jaylen Low and these other veteran pieces, and you kind of can put everything together. And then by March, you've got this team that has gelled well and had enough time to really play together and learn how to play with each other. But Jaden Quainton is really like that. That's what separates Kentucky from being a team that can get knocked out early of the NCAA tournament to a team that can go all the way to a Final Four, because he is that talented and that impactful on the defensive end of the floor. Kind of whatever he gives on offense is just a little bit gravy after that. But yes, a immediate defensive player of the year candidate whenever he does get healthy, and that is a massive talking point right now around the program.
2.6 blocks and 1.1 steals per game last year is just pretty incredible, especially like you said, as a 17-year-old freshman. Back to Jaylen Low, a guy who his freshman year, him and Bub Carrington, just out of nowhere as these like outside top 100 recruits, were just these awesome guards who just had such poise. And then last year, Pitt was like ranked top 15 at one point at the beginning of the season. He finishes the season averaging 17-4, almost 6 assists and almost 2 steals. But Pitt just wasn't winning anymore, which it just so much was on his shoulders. 2 questions about Jaylen Low's fit here. One is just how much do you think it's going to free him up to just be surrounded by so many better players? But 2, that 3-point Mark Pope was just synonymous with the 3-point shot. I know you have a guy like Lamont Butler, who handled the ball last year, who that wasn't really his strength. But is there a world where Jaylen Low becomes a much better 3-point shooter this year?
Yes, and I think that's actually the expectation, because his freshman year he did shoot the ball pretty well. Like you said, he was paired next to an NBA player in Bub Carrington, who definitely helped ease the pressure off a little bit. And then last season, you just saw his numbers tank because the talent around him just to be quite frank, just wasn't up to par with what an ACC level team should be, or at least around someone like Jaylen Low. So his numbers kind of suffered for it. I don't remember the exact 3-point shooting percentage from last year, but I know it was below 30. The expectation, and even the early, the stuff we've been hearing all offseason is that he's shooting the ball a lot better. If I've watched a lot of his Pitt tape over the offseason, and man, he just had to take bad shots. And that was something that Mark Pope acknowledged pretty quickly at his first press conference of the summer. He was like, yeah, man, like Jaylen Low's just going to be better because he's going to have better players around him. Like he just had to do so much at Pitt. And whenever you talk to Jaylen Low, that's kind of the same exact answer he gives too, is like, do you feel yourself catching, like whenever you're about to take a bad shot, do you feel like you're like, okay, that's a Pitt shot, I shouldn't do that? And he's like, I don't actually get in those situations really anymore, because I don't have to get myself in those situations. Before I even get to that point, I've already got players and pieces around me that help prevent that situation from happening entirely. So I think from that alone, you're just going to see him get a little bit, more open 3-point looks, just not have to force things as much, and you'll see his numbers just naturally go up from there. Like even in the blue-white game before he got hurt, he hit a deep NBA range 3-pointer. He's got a really pretty shot with his left hand there, and he's like a career 88% free throw shooter as well, so you really don't have any reason to believe that last year was just kind of a blip in terms of his 3-point shooting and the overall field goal percentage as well there. So ideally, you see that pop back up a little bit going into this season.
I know we're a bit in here, and we haven't really jumped into the SEC preseason player of the year, Otega Oway, who tested the waters. Was just awesome last year, especially down the stretch. 16, 5 and 2. The 3-point shot, I assume, was some of the feedback he got of improving that from the NBA side of things. But is there any other growth areas you see for Otega Oway this year?
Yeah, definitely the outside shooting is the one thing that, at least from an NBA level, that's what they want to see. You want to see him make more than 1-3 a game, and he just didn't really hit that mark last year. I think the other thing that you really, or at least from a Kentucky perspective, you want to see is he was a good defender last year, but I think he can take a leap to become a great defender, like a steady, consistently great defender, a guy you put on the other team's best player regularly. Kentucky would try to kind of do that with maybe more of a Lamont Butler last year. So Otega, if he can really lock in on the defensive end of the floor, that's really going to help him, because I think we know what we're going to get from him on the offensive side. He's a bully getting to the rim. He's got a nice little mid-range shot. He can make tough shots. I think he started the season, I think it was 20 plus games in a row of having 10 or more points in 20 something straight games last season. So we know he can put the ball on the rim. Pretty good rebounder for his size. Not a bad playmaker at all. The finishing at the rim kind of, there was a bit of a, I'm going to put my head down and go, and just whatever happens. That situation, it felt like he got stuck in those scenarios last season, maybe a little bit more than we would like going into this season. So we'll see if he can kind of cut down on those things as well. Kind of going back to the Jaylen Low part, just naturally playing with even better players around him, you should be able to cut down on some of those things. But Otega, we don't really talk about Otega too much in Lexington at this point, because we just know, he was just so good last year. He was so steady. Like we mentioned earlier, hit multiple game winners, reliable. You just knew what you were going to get out of him every night. And so I think that's just kind of the natural expectation for him going into this season, is he's going to be a guy that's going to go out there and get you 15 points every single night. Doesn't really matter how he gets them, whether it's, from the free throw line or getting to the rim, mid-range, stuff like that. So if he can sprinkle in a couple more 3-pointers in there, up his finishing at the rim a little bit, maybe do a little bit more with his passing and trying to get others involved. So it's really just marginal stuff that you want to see him really take a tick up in this coming season to really make him into that All-American player that a lot of people think he can be. But with the NBA stuff, it's just the 3-point shooting, it feels like, with him. If he can get to be a 35% guy who's making a couple a night, then you're really talking about a guy that can go in the first round. But just from a college standpoint, it's really just the small things that he needs to just improve just a little bit. And he did have he missed 10 weeks during the summer for turf toe. So the blue-white game was actually his first, he had just returned to practice that Monday. So I guess last Monday, it was his first time at practice. So we really had a week run up until that blue-white game. Really only going to have about a 2-week run up until this Purdue game on Friday, which now he's going to be without his co-star and Jaylen Low. So him and Jaylen Low really haven't had much time to kind of get acclimated with each other. So that is something that, we'll be watching early on in the season, especially whenever Low does come back. But yeah, so 10 weeks is a lot of time for someone like Oway to take off. But it's not like he's brand new. He knows Pope's system. He kind of understands everything. A lot of it's already baked into his thinking anyways. So there shouldn't be too much of a, time lost angle from missing 10 weeks of practice. So we'll see. You'll find out pretty quickly early on in the season in the regular season games, especially if Low is out, just how much that actually maybe impacted Oway or not. But the expectation is that he's just going to be Otega Oway, putting up 15 points a game every night.
I love the idea of him kind of taking on the role of being that defensive stopper as well, especially with so much guard talent around him. And the fact that the injuries from last year, like there won't really be a situation where he's really shouldered with the load and he can just kind of focus on being an efficient player and just a stud on defense. Denzel Aberdine comes over from Florida, a senior now. It kind of crept up on me because I don't remember his freshman year. Like he kind of spawned his sophomore year. Made the last free throw in the national championship game for Florida. A versatile guard who can play point. I mean, there's probably a world where this is a 3-guard lineup where he's starting alongside Oway and Low. I know he got definitely wooed with a big payday, but I think he's also in another offensive system that suits him, like playing with like Todd Golden. Obviously, it's a great thing going to Florida, and once Mark Pope, another offensive wizard. So this feels like a smooth transition for Aberdeen to come play for Kentucky. What's it kind of been like bringing him into town, and what do you expect out of him this year?
Yeah, just on the point of the shifting from Florida to Kentucky in terms of what the system is, it's not going to be terribly different. So it's it shouldn't be brand new or a shock to him at all. But yes, I mean it's no secret that he's here at Kentucky because he got a pay raise. It's hard to pull a Florida kid who spent 3 years at Florida, won a national championship there, to pull him out, especially when he was kind of in line to be one of their guys this coming season as well. So, that's no secret. Todd Golden's kind of been open about it as well. Aberdeen's been open about it. It's all, that's just the way college basketball works nowadays. But, I think especially now with Low's injury, you might see him slide in and take some more on-ball responsibilities as well. I think the hope for him is he's a winner. He's just won a lot of games, and that's a big thing that I think a lot of fans and like media people like myself included are really looking at as, okay, this kid just knows how to win. He's done it a lot. He's going to be able to bring a winning presence here. He's talked all season long about his obsession with basketball in general, just like a hoop head that you can kind of rely on to be consistent and steady. Maybe just increase his role a little bit from what it was last season of Florida. I think he was like in that 20 minute per game range. He might go up to like 25 or something like that at Kentucky. Which shouldn't be a huge drop off or a jump for him. I think the expectation is that he slides into that third guard spot alongside Low and Oway whenever the full starting lineup is actualized. Like he will be kind of that 3, if you will. Slot him there, kind of next to Oway and Low. But you just want him to come in and play solid defense, hit shots. Make plays, like just be kind of the veteran leader out there. He's not someone that you're going to, lean on like an Oway or a Low to go out there and just get you a bunch of buckets, whether it's through through passing or scoring. So, especially on the defensive end, a guy that can help ease some of the load off of someone like Oway, make life easier for someone like Jaylen Low, in terms of defending in the backcourt and just, like I said, taking some of that load and making it a little bit easier. But Aberdeen's been great so far. Especially, talking to him in interviews and everything. He just seems very upbeat, positive, happy to be here. I know Kentucky fans are happy for him to be here. So he's going to, and he even had it was a 4-game stretch in the middle of SEC play last season where I think it was Elijah Martin that I think got hurt, and Aberdeen had to come in and he stepped in and was a starter, played like close to 30 minutes a game. His numbers on that, it's a small 4-game sample size, but his numbers on that were really good, shooting really well from I think he shot like 39% from 3 or something like that, maybe in the 40s, average close to like 14 points a game. So there is kind of a sample size of him in a larger role, and the returns on that were pretty good. So against SEC competition. So we'll just have to see how it all translates now into a kind of a new system here at Kentucky.
The other SEC transfer, Mo Diabate from Alabama, who only 16 minutes a game there in his second year in the program, but had some big games. Like he had 18 and 10 in the tournament in the first round against Robert Morris, which was a close game. Another guy who I don't mean to put all these high-powered SEC offenses and say they're all the same, but in terms of like expectations from a big man and just playing hard and finishing the garbage around the rim, I feel like Mo Diabate is a nice fit here. What are expectations for Mo? Is he your starting four-man? And then also, is there a world where he, and we'll get to Brandon Garrison here in a second, but that he can kind of be a trigger man with some of these actions, as the big guy?
Yeah, that's actually something that we've been talking about the last couple of days with Mo is, can you play him at that Amari Williams spot like Pope did last year and kind of have him facilitate stuff and start the offense from the top of the key? I think so. I think he showed that a little bit at Alabama. He's shown that a little bit so far, just kind of the glimpses we've gotten, from Pro Day and the blue-white game and things like that. But Mo's one of my favorite additions for this team just because he's just a dog, like a straight bully. And we got to see the blue-white game where he just lowers that shoulder and just good luck stopping him, slowing him down. He's got a nice feel for the game too. Just a really talented defender as well. Jay Billis today for ESPN tabbed him to his all-defensive team when he was doing his All-American guys. So I definitely think he's going to be that starting four. And you can maybe even interchange him, put him at the 5 and do Brandon Garrison at the 4 if you want to get weird. Like there's options you can do with Mo Diabate. I think he's going to be able to shoot more threes here as well. I think he only shot like 40 or something last season in Alabama, so about 1 a game, and hit him at a really good rate. But I think you want to see, at the if you're sacrificing 5 percentage points to go from 40 to 35%, but you're seeing him shoot twice as many, I think you take that pretty much every single time. So they're going to let him shoot a little bit more, play make a little bit more, but he's going to be the initiator in terms of setting the tone. Like when he wants to start bullying people around, like everyone else around him kind of follows suit. So he's not going to take no for an answer type guy. He's been to a Final Four and an Elite Eight in his first 2 college seasons. So he's another guy that just knows how to win basketball games. He beat the hell out of Kentucky 3 times last season. Like Kentucky fans very vividly remember him just being bigger than anyone Kentucky had. And that was a main reason that Pope went and got him, is that they just lacked a lot of those type of, pure physical athletes. And Mo Diabate is one of them. And expectations are, they're pretty solid for him here just because of his track record and the fact that he should slide in pretty seamlessly into what Pope is expecting and really help uptick this defense from what it was last season.
I teased Brandon Garrison there, but you saw flashes of him in that Amari Williams role, as you said, 2 assists per game. Amari was so good at it, and even back to BYU, Ali Khalifa at your lovely friends over at Louisville, he was just another super high feel passer at that spot. Is there a world where Brandon Garrison, learned a lot from Amari Williams and the staff and can really be a creative passer at the 5 spot, but also do all the dirty work that he needs to at that position as well?
Yeah, I think that's the hope, is that he did. Brandon Garrison's probably going to be the starter. Will most likely be the starter while Jaden Quains is recovering. So that could take him as a starter in this team for October, November, even December, maybe even in January as well. So he's going to get his opportunity to shine. We saw flashes of it last season, kind of like you were saying. The thing with Brandon is consistency is just getting that to a point where, it kind of, to plug my own show, the Zoom actually I'm doing with my buddy Brandon Ramsey on KSR. We've actually got one dropping tonight where we kind of dove into the blue-white game stuff, and it was a lot of the same thing that we saw last year with Brandon, where it's like, all right, he does one great play, and then a couple minutes later he kind of does the same play, but he does it, too sped up, or just it doesn't think it through as well, and it ends up being a mistake. Like there's a lot of give and take with Brandon Garrison, and the give is that, okay, you see why this guy was a McDonald's All-American and maybe a potential draft pick, and the take of okay, now we see why this guy didn't really make it at Oklahoma State and, was kind of the backup last season and didn't necessarily establish himself in the summer as like a big breakout leap type guy. That can be proven wrong once the games actually start and maybe he comes out and looks a lot better. But, at least from my perspective, I can trust him to be in that Amari Williams role and operate things from the top of the key. I think he's actually a very talented passer, really good at it. It's just his mind, it doesn't always, add up to with whatever his actual actions are doing. So once all that stuff can merge together, you've got a really good player. It's just a matter of when that actually happens. But he's going to play 20 minutes a game like he did last season, maybe even a little bit more. But then you got a guy behind him like Malachi Moreno who can come in and has kind of been already pushing him for minutes there. Another 7-footer who's also a McDonald's All-American caliber player. So you've got kind of some options there, Andrea Yelovich as well, that you can really fill in case things. I don't think they'll go south with Brandon Garrison, but you can see a world where he doesn't necessarily make marked improvements from last season. You kind of have to learn or build your team around that, at least in the first few months while you're waiting for Jaden Quains to get back.
Sure. And just like on this note, it is really hard as a center to make those kind of reads and passes. Like there's a reason why there's not many centers who are averaging a bunch of assists per game, because it's got to be extremely precise and your feel has to be super high level. You kind of teased these two freshman bigs. Tell me more about Moreno and Yelovich, and throw in Reese Potter there, the 7-footer coming from Miami, Ohio.
Well, I'll start with Reese Potter because he's a Lexington kid. Went to Lexington Catholic, started at Miami, Ohio for 2 seasons. He's like the 14th man on this team, 13th man, which is crazy because he's the tallest guy out there, 7'1". He can shoot the ball from deep. He's just a very smart player. That was something that we kind of picked up from watching the blue-white game. He's played college, but he's got 50 college basketball games under his belt, so he kind of knows what he's doing. So a very not someone you want to go to and rely on to play 20 minutes a game, but if you have to break him in case of emergency for 10 minutes at a random game in November, you don't feel terrible about that option.
Sure.
But the Malachi Moreno, this is a kid from Georgetown, 30 minutes from Lexington that I've been watching play since he was a junior. So it's been really fun to watch his progression and just watching him get better, because the player that he is right now as a junior was not even the player that he was as a senior, which was not even close to the player that he is right now. Like, he's just progressing at a very impressive rate right now. And that has fans really excited, especially him being a hometown kid. Like I said, 7 foot tall, just really has good feel. He's another guy that makes Pope has a theme here. You'll sense like he's another big man that can pass the ball. Maybe not like a top of the key type of Mario Williams type guy, but like if he has his back to the basket or is running in transition, like you feel comfortable with him making the right play. Really effective rebounder. Going to be a guy that gets around the glass, offensive and defensive, cleans up any kind of loose balls. There's going to be a role for him early on, especially with, to harp on it, the JQ injury. That's just such a big factor for this team because it just affects everything behind him. So Moreno's going to play early on. He'll probably push Brandon Garrison for some minutes. He's probably not as purely talented as Brandon Garrison is right now, but just more consistent. So that's where you're trying to toe the line of figuring out who, that'll be Pope's job, obviously. That's like one of the tough parts about that front court is having to figure out, how to heighten Brandon Garrison while still giving Malachi Moreno some run as well. So I think Malachi's future is really, really bright, especially looking long-term to the NBA, because you just don't get 7-footers that have good feel all that often. And I think he's one of them. So, and then with Yelovich, he's still kind of the unknown piece. He hit a couple of 3-pointers in that blue-white game. He looked really fun, but he's, only got here in August, I think it was. So he's not been here too long. But then he's a 21-year-old. He's technically a sophomore. The NCAA just ruled that he's technically going to be a sophomore because of the age and I guess how much he's like college credits and stuff that he earned over in Croatia. But 2 years playing in the Adriatic League, which is, that's no joke of a professional league over there. He was the leading rebounder for his team last season. 6'10", could run the floor, can space it with his passing and his shooting. So you'll kind of see differing perspectives on Yelovich in terms of his first year. Like, some people think he can be the starter by the end of the season. Some are like, don't really know how he kind of fits into all of this. I think that's probably going to be somewhere in the middle where he's in the rotation, just a guy you have to play on the floor because he's so big and can shoot it so well. That he's just going to be a matchup nightmare for particular teams. So he's going to be fun to watch. We'll see how it all translates coming over from the Adriatic League. He's playing with grown men over there. That's just a different game, though. They were a little bit more skill-based. So how does he let his skill-based skill set translate over here to the college game? I think it'll be pretty smooth. It might take him a little bit to get there, but once he does, he's going to be a fine player and probably a very important rotation piece for Pope.
Still more faces to get to because that's how loaded this roster is.
Yeah.
Something interesting to me as I transitioned to Cam Williams here, coming over from Tulane, the sophomore, 9 points a game last year, a guy that, as you mentioned earlier, has gotten some NBA hype already. Mm-hmm. Because there's so many, compared to last year where you're bringing in all these super seniors, all these 23-year-olds who are kind of rentals, they connected and then they were off. But I feel like there's a lot, because there's such a competition for minutes, it seems like the plan is to kind of develop an and retain some of these guys moving forward. So Cam Williams to me is interesting because you have this NBA hype, but he's, I assume, behind Low, Oway, and Denzel in the guard pecking order. So, or I'm sorry, he's more of a wing, but
same point. Yeah.
Is he a 3? I didn't watch much Tulane last year. I've seen him pop like in the highlights. Is he a 3-4 kind of player? And where on the spectrum of like this crazy ceiling where he's a first round pick and like him being like a 20 or less minute a game depth piece, where do you kind of see him falling there?
See, he's still kind of my wild card because I don't really know what to expect. Like, from the Tulane tape, you saw a guy who has, who's 6'8", has all the tools, long, great defensively, like knows what to do on defense, hit 41% from 3 on pretty high volume, played a lot of minutes for that Tulane team, but wasn't a guy that, put the ball on the floor all that often or, could create for himself. So how does that fit on a Kentucky team where he has creators next to him? Is it, like in the blue-white game in particular, he only took one shot and played about 17 minutes. How much do we actually look into that? Is that actually kind of an indicator of what's to come? Probably not, just because of it being so early in the season and all that. But there is kind of, it's like, all right, how does Cam fit in? Does it take him a little bit to kind of find his groove, or does he, find his spots right away and learn how to play next to all these guys? And, does he stick to more of an off-ball cutting type role like he was at Tulane? Or does he try and take that next step and put the ball on the floor more? So we'll see. There's a lot of hype around Cam Williams. A lot of people think he's going to be really good here. I have no reason to doubt that. I'm just wanting to kind of see it with my own eyes first and kind of see how he actually meshes and fits and what his role will look like. And is it just kind of a, hey, go sit in the corner and wait for your shot? Or is he going to be getting involved a little bit more? I guess with Pope's offense, you're going to put him in zoom actions and stuff like that and make it so you can free him up and try and get him involved on purpose and get him clean looks to get him going. But he's 6'8" and is so long. Like, he just has all the physical tools right away, especially seeing him in person for the first time playing basketball. It's like, man, this kid he's just huge for 6'8". So at least from that aspect, he's got what he needs to be a good player here.
That size, defensive versatility, and like you said, the ridiculous efficiency on 4.6 3-point attempts per game last year to hit 42% on them is pretty absurd. Colin Chandler and Trent Noah both earned some minutes last year and were really good offensively, at least. I know there's kind of a logjam here, but I feel like you teased some glowing reviews of them this summer. What do you expect out of them being able to crack this rotation and make an impact here?
Yeah, Trent Noah, his teammates have called him the best shooter on the team all offseason long, and at least from what we've seen in the preseason stuff so far, he sure looks like it. Like, that's going to be what gets him on the floor. He definitely looked like he got himself in better shape over the offseason. That was a big thing with him last year, is he just wasn't in SEC-level shape. Looks like he is now, and he can just shoot the hell out. Like, he's a really, really good shooter. But can he do all the other stuff? So, shooting is going to get him on the floor. Can he do the other stuff to keep him on the floor? Defense wasn't exactly a strong suit for him, but he's a pretty solid rebounder for like a 6'5", like tweener type 2-3. So that can help him as well. Does he just kind of get does playing last year just help him be a smarter player this season? And it really take, more confidence as well. I think that's a big thing with him, is just being more confident, with being willing to shoot the ball. So I think Trent Noah's going to play a lot just because he's really, really good at shooting the ball. He's probably the best shooter on the team. But can he do all the other stuff to take that leap and make himself into kind of an all-SEC player, which a lot of Kentucky fans think he can be by the time he's a junior or senior? You're going to learn that this season, I think, if he's to that level. But from shoot, like there's no denying that he's going to be on the floor to shoot the ball. And if he can do the other stuff, Pope will keep him out there as well. With Colin Chandler, we saw his March last season was that's when it all hit for him. He took 2 years off for his mission trip, got hurt the summer he came back at Kentucky. So he was behind the 8 ball for pretty much the entire season. And then once March hit, with all the injuries kind of started piling together, and it's like, all right, Colin, here's your time. We're giving you more minutes. Go figure it out. And he did, to his credit, for the most part. Like, shot the ball well, made big plays, had big moments in big games as well. So we know he's a high level athlete for a 6'5", 6'6" kid. Just really has all the tools and intangibles that you want. But he's another guy that's like, all right, let's just kind of see it, put it all together, put it on a larger scale, give him some more minutes, and what does it look like then? But as I'm saying all this, I'm there's a lot of guys that are going to need all these minutes, so it's going to be hard to figure out or to give Colin Chandler the minutes he needs to continue progressing, while also making sure that everyone else gets the minutes they need. So I do think Colin Chandler's probably pretty higher up in that pecking order compared to some of the other guys, just because he could do a little bit of everything. But he's going to have to get better, just on-ball defense, things like that as well. If he can do that, I think you're going to see him definitely be a very important rotation piece for this team as well.
Finally getting to Jasper Johnson, a really fun guard who, once again, I don't know where the minutes are coming from, but super talented microwave scoring guard, lefty, if I'm not mistaken, too.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about Jasper Johnson, and no disrespect to Jasper, because I've seen some hype on him, and it wasn't on purpose for me to get to him this late. This is just kind of wow.
Yeah, we have 3 lefties on this team. Jasper, Jaylen Low, and Mo Diabate are all lefties, so that's kind of fun. But yeah, so Jasper Johnson is just pure score. Can score from anywhere, whether it's 4 feet from behind the 3-point line or making a tough floater over a guy that's taller than him right in his face. He's going to find ways to get buckets. That's not the issue with him. The issue is getting up to speed on defense, learning the college game, just learning the feel of it. So I think there will probably be a process with him there of getting up to that speed. But if especially, depending on what happens with Low, if Jaylen Low has to miss the first couple of games of the season, you're probably going to see Jasper, along with Colin Chandler and Denzel Aberdine, play more point guard stuff. That'll give him a little bit more opportunity there. But yeah, Jasper, man, he can just score the ball really well. And if Mark Pope is if the team's struggling to score and they need a guy who can just go get them 8 points in a couple minutes, Jasper's the guy you would throw out there and say, okay, go hit some tough shots, try and get the offense alive and then go from there. So the long-term potential, I think, with Jasper is better than what the short-term potential is right now, just because of the talent around him. He is a guy that could potentially get squeezed if everything kind of falls right for the other players. But you could say that for most of the guys we've talked about on this, coming off the bench. So, but I like Jasper. He's another guy that I've got to watch since he was, a junior in high school. He's another Lexington boy as well. So he's going to be fun to watch. I will say, you will not be without highlights when you're watching Jasper Johnson play, because he is a ton of fun to watch play.
Has there been, honest conversations between the staff and these players about minutes or just being a good teammate or stuff like that? Is just trying to, I understand last year maybe Mark Pope has a little PTSD of just having to deal with injuries. Now it's 3 guys get injured and we're fine. Kind of just walk me through how we got to this point of where there are so many players. I mean, if you can have this many good players, why not? But is any part of you just a little nervous of preserving the peace and keeping people happy when there's just so many guys?
I think there's 2 talking points for that, and one would just be, I don't know if scared is the right word, but that's the word I'm going to use, is Pope got maybe a little scared of how things played out last season with all the injuries. So he's I'm going to go get as much insurance as I can and make sure that, like you said, if 3 guys go down, you have a situation where you're not screwed, essentially, and you don't have to have, Travis Perry playing, 28 minutes against Alabama on the road, stuff like that, stuff that happened last season. And no, I love Travis Perry, no discredit to him, but that just was a tough moment for him, So building in insurance where you don't have to put yourself in those situations. And the next part is, got a lot of NIL money. So part of keeping all these players happy, if they're not playing a bunch, is they're still getting paid a bunch. So maybe that's part of it as well. As Pope, they gave him a war chest of money. They said, okay, go use it and go build the deepest roster in college basketball. And that's what he did. So maybe, I don't know the exact conversations. I'm sure that those talks have been had. But Pope is a guy that likes to play guys anyways. He wants to go deep. Last year, he was still playing Travis Perry and Trent Noah before all the injuries happened. Their role elevated a bit once those injuries happened, but those guys were still touching the floor a bit. And I think you're going to see Pope do that anyways early on in the season. And then as it gets along, he'll start to figure out the actual, cut it down to the 8 or 9 pieces. But he's not going to play I doubt he's going to play anyone 30 minutes a game. Everyone's going to be in that, at least the top 7, 8 guys are all going to be hovering around that 20, 24, 25. Otega Oway might get close. Otega Oway, Jaylen Low will probably be your leading minutes guys at 28, 29 a game. And then you just kind of fill it in from there with the rest of the rotation. So I do think that, it could be an issue, with guys wanting more minutes and stuff like that. If Jasper Johnson doesn't really play the first 2 months, is he going to be happy about that? Who knows? So, but that's why I guess they paid Mark Pope the big bucks. and he'll figure it out as he goes along. So, but that's not something that I'm terribly worried about right now. I'm just kind of going off vibes from what we've seen all summer, but it definitely feels like these guys are, enjoying each other and being around each other and wanting to play basketball. So as long as the wins come, I think that's the main thing. If the team's winning, I don't think anyone's going to complain about playing 12 minutes a game or something like that.
For a team with the SEC preseason player of the year, the fact that depth is maybe the number one strength of the team is pretty incredible. Also paired with the fact that it's pretty crazy that the number one non-freshman on draft boards right now is a guy that might just be luxuriously added to the rotation, an already deep rotation, who might be the best defender in the country, like, and to a potentially like undefeated team or something like that. I'm not saying y'all are going to be undefeated, but there's just so much working in Kentucky's favor right now. And if the pieces mesh and this team is elite on both ends of the floor, which it's 100% my expectation that they are, the ceiling is very high for this team. Thanks for coming on, Zach. Any final parting thoughts before I get chatty?
No, I'm sorry. I know I yapped longer than I probably should have there, but it was fun to talk some basketball with you, so I appreciate it. The sense around the program right now is, even with the Jaylen Low injury, everyone's very excited going into this season. They do see, the Final Four talk is real with this team, especially like you said, adding a potential top 5 pick in the middle of January or something like that. So the ceiling for this team is definitely to the Final Four. We'll see what the floor looks like. I imagine it's still pretty high as well, just with how many guys they have. But this is definitely a team that's going to be trying to battle for a championship. So,
going to be a fun season. Thanks again for coming on, Zach.
Thank you. Appreciate it.